Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's dualta, and in this podcast series, I will be interviewing investors, advisors, thought leaders, recruiters, entrepreneurs who are based all over the world, and we will be discussing how to set up, scale, operate, and even sell a world-class recruitment company. I have said a lot of times that you don't have to be Greg Savage to come on here. I'm happy to interview anybody who has an interesting story. That said, if you are Greg Savage, I'm definitely going to have you on here and interview you. So today, I'm going to be sharing you my interview with Greg Savage. It was really great. I was a little bit nervous leading up to this. I've been following his stuff for quite a long time. And it was great getting into it, hearing a little bit about his journey and how he set up and scaled and sold and is involved in lots of recruitment companies that have exited. So we jumped into what sets them apart and what he looks for when he invests in companies, what he's into at the moment, what he believes the future of recruitment is. We jumped a wee bit more detail into automation, AI, the tools, but not so much that it'll make your eyes glaze over. Like he's very punchy in this interview and gave great detail and gave me 40 minutes of his best self. So really, really proud of being able to do this interview and really grateful for Greg's time to come on and candidly discuss everything with me. But less about me and more about Greg. Let me know what you think about this. And if you enjoy it, as ever, please give us a wee rating on iTunes and leave us a comment and reach out to me on LinkedIn if you've enjoyed it. And over to Greg.
Hello.
Greg Savage, how are you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you wonderfully.
Oh, good news.
Good stuff. Where am I calling to, Greg?
Where are you calling to?
Yeah, where in the world are you? You were on a world tour recently.
Yeah, I'm sitting at my desk at home in Sydney, Australia.
That's great. 40 years in the game and still grinding at 8 p.m., hey?
Well, that's only because you want to speak to me in a time zone that's good for you, and I'm very accommodating. That's the only reason.
Yeah, and I thank you. I thank you a lot for that. So you're a man that doesn't need a lot of introductions, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Could you tell us a little bit about how you fell into recruitment, and then we'll jump into the good stuff?
Well, yeah, sure. A lot of people fall into recruitment, but not too many straight from university, certainly not in January 1980, when the recruitment industry was very, very different. And not only that, I started in an executive search firm. I was 21. The next youngest recruiter was 46.
Wow.
They were a crusty firm of executive recruiters, and I got an opportunity there. And it was the best thing because it taught me about selling retainers and the value of the work that we do. And so the short history after that is very difficult to give you because 40 years can't be condensed very easily, but there were 2 or 3 years in the UK. There was a period back with the same company in Australia. And when that company was bought by Hayes, I set out with 2 other guys and we started our own business called Recruitment Solutions. And that grew to 40, 50 million, and we listed it on the Australian Stock Exchange via an IPO, which is quite unusual in the late 90s. And the other big chunk of things I've done was 10 years with Aquint, which is the world's largest marketing recruiter. And I was their international CEO, which is basically what the Americans call all their business outside of the US. And that was 5 offices when I started. We ended up with 35 in 17 countries. So that was an interesting, very interesting and exciting period. And then we engineered a management buyout of 10 of their offices with a company called Firebrand that I was the major shareholder of. And I sold that about 5 years ago. And since then, I've been consulting to the industry, mainly through, I'm on the board of 12 recruitment companies in about 5 different cities, 3 different countries. So that keeps me very engaged and very switched on, and I'm learning all the time. I'm also invested in some recruiters and HR tech businesses. So constantly engaging with trying to grow businesses and dealing with the issues of change in our industry. And as you know, I do a bit of speaking, but that's really just for fun, a bit of money, and it takes me to wherever the rugby internationals are in the world. So that's what that's about.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's it. That's 40 years for you.
Okay, show's over. All right, brilliant. Let me bring you back to that young man who set up his first recruitment company. Did you have any money? How did you manage to do it?
We had no money. I was 27. I had been in the industry for 7 years, and I'd had a good run. I was already a director of this company called Accountancy Placements. I was the most junior. I think I was actually an associate director. And then when Hayes bought the business, we said to Hayes, "Hey guys, we're running your business here. Can we have equity in your business?" And they said, "Certainly not." They were very nice about it, but they weren't going to be giving any equity to any young upstarts from down under. But they didn't present it like that. They just said, "Hey guys, we're a public company. We're not doing that." And so we started our own company. I was 27. The other 2 that founded it were a bit older. We had no money. I had to borrow my $15,000 to put it into the business. And I didn't have $15,000. I literally had to borrow it. And we did something a little bit interesting. Each person put 15 in, and then we got another 55 from a venture, from an outside investor. And we started with $100,000, I think it was.
Wow.
This was a long time ago.
And when you did that, did you have a vision for where that business was going to go? Did you have a model in place, or were you making it up as you went along?
We never anticipated and dreamed that it would reach the heights that it did. And I can tell you about that later if you're interested.
Yeah, of course.
But we also didn't start on the smell of an oily rag, because we borrowed money, because we were prepared to give equity away before we'd even started. We'll not give it away, sell it. We started with a reasonable amount of capital, and we started on day 1 with 9 people.
Wow.
And that's not what people normally do. And all of them were experienced. And we made our first placement at 10 past 11 on the 4th day, as I recall. It was a company called State Street. Anyway, and away we went from there.
And is this in Sydney, Greg?
Goal was, sorry, mate?
Is this in Sydney?
Yeah, this was in Sydney.
Okay.
That business eventually had offices in about 8 cities, but it was in Sydney. And I think our goal was, to answer your question, to do it really well, to do it our way. And we had some vague image of success. But I guess if you'd asked me that day what success looked like, it probably looked like a company of 20 people. Yeah. It ended up being a company of 250 people. So it surpassed that.
And let me bring you back to that point. How did you persuade 9 people to join you? Like from day 1? That seems like something that would be really difficult to do today.
Okay, it's a difficult thing to talk about in a way, because even though it's 30 years ago, it was in 1987.
Yeah.
What happened was, as I mentioned, the 3 of us resigned, and we went to our key people, and we had a close, this is a lesson about leadership. It's a lesson about trust. It's a lesson about loyalty. It's a lesson about opportunity. And we handpicked 6 or 7 people, all from that business. And we said to them, "We're striking out on our own, and we can guarantee you nothing except we've got enough money to pay your salary for the first 3 or 4 months. And after that, we better be billing. Otherwise, we're up, a certain creek." And they all came on lower salaries that they were on before. And actually, we started with 2 offices. I said we started with 9 people. That's true. But there were 7 in Sydney office, and there were 2 in North Sydney office on day 1, which was the 17th of August, 1987.
If you could put your finger on anything that you did wrong as a young man back then, from a leadership perspective or from a decision-making perspective, was there anything that you would change now if you were to put the Greg Savage of today in the shoes of that young man?
Mate, how long is this podcast? Have we got like 8 or 9 hours? I'm
I'll
not being
keep you as long as I can
facetious.
get.
I mean, I was highly competitive, naive, set far too high standards, very black and white, didn't have empathy, was not a good listener, was a one-way communicator, do it this way, what was quick with the tongue, quick with a smart remark. You know, people don't learn when they're embarrassed or humiliated, but I wasn't a bully, but I wasn't empathetic. Having said that, I was boots in and helped people and chest to chest, client visits, you know, filling jobs, and it garnered a lot of loyalty. And there are plenty of people, I kid you not, from those days who are still working in companies I own and who still come around to my house to drink my wine and tell stories about what a prick I was. But you know, you evolve and you improve. And there were other weaknesses, you know, there were other just tactical mistakes, like you know, promoting the best recruiter to be the manager. It's not always the smartest thing to do. It took a lot of business at low margins that I would never take. Well, I say now. I mean, I learned quickly. I mean, this is 30 years. I was 27 when this started. So I guess you can make a lot of mistakes in your 20s. And I continue to make them right through to now, but less, and not so much the same ones. So yeah, lots of mistakes, and learned a lot about leadership and getting the best out of people, and developing people is really the key.
Can you identify somebody who should be a good manager? You just touched upon maybe a big biller shouldn't always be promoted to being the manager. Is there certain soft skills that you look for, or?
Yeah, totally. So let's put it like this. You can be a big biller and become a great manager, but they are totally different skills. Okay, so a big biller, a great recruiter is typically a selfish person, and I say that in a positive way. I don't mean they're mean, but they want to be top of the leaderboard. They love the thrill of the chase. They love the attention of the highest billings. They love the immediate thrill of commission checks. Whereas a manager gets their satisfaction out of the success of others. That is the key differentiator. Not for altruistic reasons necessarily, but to be a good manager, you do actually have to care about the career of the people that are working with you. And so a manager will have coaching skills. A manager will have communication skills, which includes listening. A manager will have some level of empathy and some ability to clearly identify goals and expectations and consequences for non-achievement, but also supporting people through that. So these are some of the big differences that billers don't necessarily have. I mean, I was a good recruiter, but I wasn't great. I wasn't the best ever. I was better than most. You would have hired me, but I wasn't great. But I soon learned that my real thrill was growing businesses and helping other people succeed, and through that, creating an asset of value.
And with the businesses that you look at in the market now, what excites you out there?
So I mentioned I'm on the board of a number of companies, advisory board. I would only agree to that if I thought these companies had certain characteristics, and I will answer them for you.
Yeah.
But also I do invest in businesses, and some of those have been I invested in one business that ended up being more successful than Recruitment Solutions. So, and it's always the people that you're backing. It's always the people. I mean, success in business is made up of three things: character, strategy, and implementation. And frankly, the second best strategy, implemented strongly by people with character, will beat the best strategy implemented by lesser people with less drive. So you really need to back the people, and that includes their character, but also trust, loyalty, and your belief in their ability to do what is a very difficult job. But also I look for companies that are in niches that I think are growing. I look for companies who have a clearly identified candidate acquisition strategy, because agency recruitment is all about access to candidates. Mm-hmm. And certainly I'd be looking for companies that had strategies that go well beyond, job boards and LinkedIn and whatever, but a wide variety of sourcing, branding.
Let's jump into the people piece. What
So
what are those characteristics that you look for? Say I'm a 27-year-old and I have a bit of recruitment experience now. I'm ready to go out on my own. What are the type of things that you're going to ask me on an interpersonal level to figure out if I'm made of the right stuff?
well, I'd look for some track record of ability. I'd look for some track record and evidence of resilience. I'd look for those management abilities, because I'm not going to invest in someone who, by the way, I'm not a guy whose main business in life is investing in recruitment companies. I've got a lot of other things that I'm
Sure.
more interested in. But if you're asking me that question, then I would say I would, when you want to build a recruitment company, what you're really looking at is its value in the future. And you almost certainly know that recruitment companies are valued on a multiple of profit typically. But what the buyer is really buying is the certainty of future profits. And so what you've got to see is somebody who's got the ability to build a sustainable business. And that means they've got to build a business where revenue is generated by a good spread of other people. You don't want somebody who's sitting in a corner billing $1 million a year, because you can't sell a business like that. What you want is somebody who can build a sustainable business. And so that means they've got to have those coaching skills, those performance management skills, those hiring skills, leadership skills, to build a team around them. I'd like to see that they had a strategy, that they had a niche. Typically, I'd want to see what advantage they had over anyone else who wanted to set up. And that might be those soft skills, but it also might be credibility in a niche and contacts and networks in a niche, which I would find attractive if I thought it was the right niche. So those are some of the things I'd be looking for.
What type of niches are exciting you out there in the marketplace right now?
Oh, look, it varies from city to city, country to country. And as I said, I'm not really spending my time thinking about it. I'm more interested in HR tech businesses that are going to actually make some difference on the recruitment industry. So that's something I have invested in 2 or 3 of those.
Well, let's jump into some of that then.
Well, which one? What would you? So there's a company called Video My Job, which I think is a really smart, simple tool that is about job advertising via video, but it's really about employer branding. And it's really about amplifying through social a message to reach passive candidates. And I think that's very clever. A company called Live Hire. I was one of the first people involved in that. That's now listed on the stock exchange. They build talent communities. They're all about going to corporates and saying you need to build a pipeline of candidates before you need them. It's about active recruiting rather than passive. So I think that's pretty smart. And there are 1 or 2 others that I'm more low key in that I think are interesting. In terms of recruitment companies, I don't really care the niche unless it's one that I think could be dying, like or slowing down. But if it's one where I think there is a sustainable future, it's about depth. It's about ability to access candidates in an environment where clients need candidates. That's the obvious thing to say, but people seem to miss it. So you really want to actually open a recruitment business in a market where there's a shortage of candidates.
Yeah.
And a lot of recruiters say, oh, but if it's hard to find candidates, then that's the wrong place to be. That's the right place to be. You need to be in that place, and then you need to be the world champion at engaging with candidates. And if you can't do that, you'll no longer have value going forward, because screening candidates is not a process of value anymore. Machines and low-paid people can do that very effectively.
It seems to be changing quite a lot. Even since, like, I was in recruitment in Australia 4 years ago now, and I did about 3 years there, and we were very protective over our database. And not that we were using it to predict anything, but just more the IP. Now we seem to be more focused on becoming famous in a niche and being known for that, and that being a very primary driver when building talent communities.
I think
How does
just to pick up? Sorry, okay, ask your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, how does that affect the modern recruiter whenever they're being brought into a business now? Because before it was very much get on the phone, do your 20 candidate calls, your 20 client calls, and get an ad done, try and get out to a couple of meetings, do a couple of candidate regs, and then that was your like get a few resumes out, and then that was your day. Now, do you see recruitment companies investing in the other side and managing to put all that in the one day, or how do you see it changing in companies you're involved in?
Oh, I definitely see people doing it. I see a lot of the current recruiter's job is being automated.
Yeah.
Right. So it's being, and it will continue to be automated, and there'll be no value in it. And recruiters who try to compete with the machine will lose. So what you've got to do is you've got to be smart. You've got to work out where the value is in what you do. And the value is increasingly not so much in sourcing, because that can be automated. It is engaging part of sourcing. So finding candidates is becoming easier and easier. Recruiting them is becoming harder and harder. So if you look at that little simple area there, recruiters are going to be great at the engaging part, and most of them are not, right? So reaching out to people, constructing a conversation, and bringing people into the hiring process. That's a real skill where there's value. That's one area. Screening candidates. There are recruiters in Sydney today and all over the world, London too, who will spend most of their day screening people off job boards, of which 1 out of 200 will end up getting a job. That is a completely fucked business model. It won't be sustainable, because it can be screened by keyword matching and very sophisticated machine learning, better without bias by machines than a human being. So again, not much value in that going forward. Not much value in the logistics, setting up interviews, etc. That can be done by machines and will be done more effectively. So where's the value? Well, the value for recruiters is in their ability to find candidates and actually recruit them and bring them to the hiring table through influencing skills. So really the recruiter's future is on their consulting, persuading, advising, influencing ability. Most recruiters, no, I shouldn't say that, many recruiters are very little more than keyword matchers and spammers of resumes, and they have no future.
Do you get much pushback from agencies out there when you bring your ideas of this to the field? And has that changed in recent times?
Look, I've been saying things like that for, 5, 6, 7 years. And in the beginning, people paid lip service to it, and most didn't change. But certainly now the ones that I'm on the board of, they don't pay lip service to it. They are, we're investing in digital marketing and a whole range of things. But also the occasional talks that I do around the place, I feel more people, it's making sense to them more. The biggest threat to most owners of recruitment companies is complacency and backward-looking attitudes. And there is a lot of that around. It's like, we're still making money. The old ways are still the best. There is a lot about the old ways that indeed are the best, like picking up the phone and influencing somebody to go for a job. But there's a lot about the old ways, like mindless cold calling and spamming resumes around town, that are just no longer effective. And even LinkedIn, as important as it is, and job boards, as important as they are, depending on what niche you're in, I think are going to become increasingly ineffective. And we need to come up with different strategies to engage with candidates. Because candidates are thinking differently to the way they did. They're behaving like consumers. They're constantly on the lookout. They are dipping their toe into the market almost immediately. They've got a new job. They're looking at reviews. They're looking at social media. And so their attitude to job hunting is very different to the way it was even 10 years ago.
When you look at setting up a business from scratch, if I could bring you to being that young guy again, but with your knowledge, and it's day one, you don't have a lot of money, what would you do?
Well, that is a scenario that is not realistic, because I do have a lot of knowledge and I do have a little bit of money. So I would very hard to put myself into that position.
Let's jump into what Greg Savage would do right now if he was to set up a recruitment company.
Okay, well, I did set up a recruitment company. It was a few years ago now, but it's called People to People, and I did that as a major shareholder, but not as an executive. We started with 5 people on day one. All of them worked at Recruitment Solutions years ago. And we were very, very stringent in a niche, which was accounting. And we put a big chunk of our emphasis on contract and temporary, because that's the smart thing to do. Even though permanent is more attractive when you start out, because big chunks of revenue are exciting when you're starting out. Growing a temp desk is expensive and scary, but that is what we did. We did both, but we put a big emphasis on temp. But that business now has sales of $100 million. And
why is it important to put an emphasis on temp, just in case anybody...
Why is it important? I'll tell you why. Because 2 reasons. Number one, when you come to sell your business, the value you will get is exponentially higher if 60 to 70% of your gross profit comes from temp.
Okay.
That's the first reason. The second reason is when a recession comes along, and it will, your permanent revenue could drop as much as 80% within a 2-month period. Your temporary revenue will drop by 30, 40% and then start to climb. And I've had that experience, I don't know, 5, 6 times in my life. The biggest one was in 1990 when at Recruitment Solutions, our revenues went from 13 million to 8. But because we had 60% of our business temp, we survived. 60% of recruitment companies in Australia went bust in that 18-month period. And when we came out the other side, that wasn't the only reason we survived. There were 2 other big reasons. One is we didn't have any debt. And the second is we cut our costs viciously, quickly, which was smart. It wasn't my decision. It was actually something I argued against in my company. But smarter heads prevailed, and we cut our costs. And so we broke even for 2 years while the rest of the industry went into liquidation. And then when the market picked up, that's what drove our growth towards a listing on the stock exchange, actually. And so there's where your temps have helped you through. So most people start focusing on perm, and they end up with a business that's either all permanent or 80% permanent, and it virtually has no value or can be sold for 2 times earnings, which is, you'd ask, why would you do that? Because just stay in the business for an extra year or 2 and you'll get that money in dividends. So that's why. And so those were some of the things we thought about. We invest in technology early. I think that's important. And we invested in a digital marketing brand early. I encourage anyone listening to this to look at the social footprint of people to people. That's the word people, the number 2 and people.com.au. Just have a look at their blog and their Facebook and their LinkedIn and their online videos and their podcasts. They built a massive footprint.
And so let's jump into the first bit before the social side that they've invested in. What, from a technology perspective, what type of tools out there are exciting you from an AI standpoint? What's the latest in ATSs that recruitment companies are putting in that are like blowing your mind?
People ask me that, mate, and to be perfectly honest, I don't really know or care. I'm 60 years old. I don't really give a fuck about all that very much. But it's not that I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology. Quite the reverse. It's just I'm not spending all my time studying up on the thousands of tools. I get approached by an HR tech guy or woman, but it's 90% a guy, with their new piece of technology every week. Right, every week, and almost by the 3rd sentence, they tell me it's going to Uberize recruitment. Very few of them are going to have. Not that I'm sure why you'd want to Uberize anything, seeing as Uber lost $3 billion last year. But put that to one side. What they're trying to say is they're going to disrupt the industry, and they for the main are not going to. But to answer your question, I would say that these are the things that I'd be looking at. I would look at the smartest automated sourcing tools I could find. In other words, algorithms can be written to find candidates on the internet. I wouldn't have highly paid people spending ages doing that. I would have highly paid people engaging with them and bringing them into the hiring process. First thing. Second thing is chatbots. I think chatbots are at the beginning of the infancy of their life, and people think chatbots are dehumanizing. Do you know, if you stop a candidate in the street and you ask them what their biggest criticism of a recruiter is, it'll be, I can never get to speak to that recruiter. So, and which is true, because recruiters don't take calls from candidates. It's almost impossible. So what we need is chatbots that can feed candidates with the information they want, screen them in, screen them out, and then the recruiter can take over. So I'd be investing in a chatbot, which you can get developed for you very simply right now. I would be investing in not screening, but matching tools like Pocket Recruiter. Have a look at Pocket Recruiter. I've got no interest in this company, except I've seen how it's worked. There's a couple of very interesting blogs written by Alex Wetzel, W-E-T-Z-E-L, I think it is, or S-E-L. Have a look at them about Pocket Recruiter and the massive money saving and generating effect of artificial intelligence used to create shortlists from recruiters' own databases. Because don't you, that most recruiters are running ads on job boards to recruit candidates that are already in their databases, right?
Yeah.
So this technology sorts that out. And that's just one, right? It's commercially available, but there's many others. So I said I didn't know a lot of things, but I do know a few things. And those are the ones that I would be looking at. I would also be looking at anything that slows the process down. You want your CVs passed, your CVs formatted automatically. I think the videoing of job interviews to get sort of amplification and distribution through social channels. These are all technologies that are available now and that should be explored. There are probably, there are certainly many others. I haven't done a survey of them all. There are ATSs that are much more productive than others that people need to look at. But you've got to go and do your own work on that. I'm not really worried too much about it every day of my life right now.
And then the next bit, before I cut you off, there was the social side. Well, what's important in building a personal brand? What type of things can we do?
Oh, there's a massive. I mean, there are massive things that recruiters can do and should be doing. And the first thing I'd say is that it is actually not a choice. You really need to do it. But people don't seem to understand that building a brand on social isn't putting an odd tweet or sharing a job on LinkedIn. That's not building a social brand. A social brand is having a voice. It's to differentiate yourself through some sort of authenticity. It's about generosity. You should be giving more than taking. And by that, I mean sharing information, connecting people, answering questions. You've got to treat, social's got to be woven into the fabric of the way that you work, rather than a task that you do every now and again. And the very simplest, and the secret is, not a secret, but one of the things I try to advise people is you don't need to be everywhere on social. You need to be where your candidates and clients hang out. That's where you need to be. Now, that's often on LinkedIn for most people, but it might be on Twitter for some people. If you're looking for accountants, Twitter's not your place probably. If you're looking for marketing people, it might be. It might be Instagram. It might be Pinterest. It might be somewhere else. But you've got to work out where your audience is. That's what you've got to do. Where is your audience? And then target. It's a content marketing strategy. You've got to put out content that is interesting to that audience. And people often say, well, what have I got? I've got nothing of interest to my audience. Well, that's a bit of a worry, seeing you work in the sector. But you probably do. Just a simple comment that, hey, my clients are missing out on the best candidates because they're taking too long to make decisions. Well, that statement right there, if it's true, is quite an interesting piece of content. That could be turned into a blog or a tweet or a status update on LinkedIn. So my simple advice for anyone listening to this, first thing you'd want to do is to build your connections on LinkedIn, because that's the simplest thing to do, and then put out content by a status update every single day on LinkedIn. Start to get comments, commentary, discussion, and that's part of your day, because what you're really trying to do, I'm not against recruiters making calls, but all I'm saying is, why make a cold call when you can make a warm call? And you can make a warm call when you've engaged with someone on social and they know who you are and they have an image of you already. I mean, I didn't come to you, right, for this podcast. You came to me. Why was that?
I came to you because I first came across you when I was in Australia, and the manager I was working for took in a guy for an interview, and she came in to me and she said, I want this guy to come on your desk. I'm not too sure on him, but he just quoted the Greg Savage blog at me. So I think he's into the recruitment stuff. So I'm going to give him a shot. So that put you on my radar. And,
but think about it. We've never met, right?
Yeah.
But you have an image of me which is based on content, I presume.
Yeah.
You've read my blogs or you've seen my tweets or whatever. And so that encourages you to think, hey, I should go and talk to that guy because he's got something of value to say to my audience. That's you speaking, right? But it's all built on content. You don't actually know me. You don't know if I've got anything to say. You've never had a conversation with me before, but it was on content. And that's because I've been doing it for 10 years and I've been targeting my audience, which is recruiters. And this is what good recruiters need to do for their audiences. I'm not saying they spend 8 hours a day on it, but I think they do spend 30 minutes a day on it. Cut back on a few useless cold calls, speaking to emails, and build your personal brand.
Yeah,
absolutely. Speaking to voicemail, I should say. Speaking to voicemail is what I meant to say. Yeah.
Where do you see agency recruitment in 5 to 10 years time? Given that you've just given us a great outline on that, we'll be more consultative, we'll have less administration tasks, and we'll be documenting and being a bit more creative with building our brand through marketing. What does that agency look like? Is it a smaller agency? Is it like, how do you envisage it?
Well, anyone who tries to predict the future is a bit of a fool, and I do it all, and I do it all the time. So I'm a bit of a fool, because you never know. And to try and predict 10 years is just too hard, because
give me 5.
I'd say 5 years. I think the agency recruitment industry will be thriving in 5 years, but the vast majority of recruiters who are in it now will no longer be in it, because they wouldn't have adapted. I think the role of the recruiter, both agency and in-house, will become very much a talent advisor. I think the agency recruiter for the candidate will be like an agent, like how footballers and artists and have agents who represent them in the market exclusively. I think that's the future. I think the most highly talented people with the best skills will go to one trusted recruiter who will represent them in the marketplace. So I think that's going to be a massive change and a different skill set for recruiters. And on the client side, they'll work with fewer clients, and they'll work much closer with those clients, because the transactional recruiting will just be done by machines or very low paid people in other countries. And I think that's already happening. So I think it will be very consultative, very advisory. And I've been predicting for a long time more niche. And yet some of the big generalist recruitment companies seem to be doing fine. Thanks very much. So, I haven't been right on that point yet. But People to People, for example, is a generalist recruiter with specialist niches, and they're growing at 10, 15% a year and have been doing so for 5 years. So, I'm on their board. I'm one of their shareholders, and I'm saying we've got to be niche. And they're saying, we're doing fine. Thanks, Greg.
So that's an interesting point. And this is just an observation from what I see. Australia is so relationship driven, so handshake driven, and still quite client focused, that you can probably get away without being as niche. Where we do a lot in America, and our clients obviously are really busy there. The ones that are growing fastest are niche, and because it's a faster moving marketplace, it's very product driven, and that's the core difference I see between those two markets. But hey, what did I know?
I think that's true, and I'm involved in New Zealand. I'm on the board of a company. I'm an owner of a company there. They're accounting specialists, so they are niche, but a lot of their competitors do accounting as one of a range of things. So I think that's even a smaller market. I think you're right. Having said that, there is also very strong evidence of some recruitment companies with deep vertical specialization doing very, very well. And I still think that will evolve. Maybe it'll evolve. This is not a new thing to say. Other people have said this, and I've said it too. But maybe it'll evolve to a lot of smaller niche type businesses, not old-fashioned boutiques. They'll be very dexterous. They'll be very technology-driven, but they'll be niche. And then your big giants that we're all aware of will continue to roll along. But maybe the middle ground will be more difficult to sustain. I don't know. That's where a company like People to People is right now, and seem to be doing very well. But who knows? We're watching very carefully trends and how things might change for the future.
Well, Craig, it's been fascinating speaking to you. Tell us, when's your next tour happening over on this side of the world? I know you've just had one, and people can check you out on the Savage Truth, your
Yes,
blog, and where else?
So yeah, go to the Savage Truth. Great name for a blog.
Great name
which
for a blog.
Is you've got your articles there. You've got your Savage your blog, which is every second week, and there's 400 or 500 articles. And I encourage people to use the search bar for the topics they want, because people often ask me for information, and it's all there. There's also Savage 60 Seconds or 60 Savage Seconds, which is a 1 minute little soundbite I put out, and there's about 50 of those up there. Go to my YouTube channel, which you can go to from the blog. There's a lot of videos. There is a page on the blog called Free Resources, which has got a lot of podcasts like this up there on a wide variety of topics. I talk about a lot of the things we've talked about today, and some of them in more depth. so people can access that. There's Twitter and there's LinkedIn, and I encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm delighted to connect with anyone related to the industry. The public speaking stuff I do is as I say, a lot of fun, and it generates a lot of activity and money, which is always good. But mostly, it's to keep me going to parts of the world I like to go to. And I think the next one in the UK will be in March next year, and it'll go up on my blog soon. It'll be Manchester, London, and Glasgow. And that's all I think we've got planned. Oh, something around Australia in February next year, but it'll all be on the blog if people would like to. There's a page there called Speaking Gigs or something like that. They can check it out.
Well, I'll come and buy you a beer in London.
I would love that. I know exactly where we'll do it. I'll know exactly which beer it'll be. So I look forward to it.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you go. A bit surreal interviewing Greg Savage. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not in our industry, you probably shouldn't be listening to it. It might bore you. But if you are, you must be thinking, how did he manage to get Greg Savage on his podcast? And the mad thing is, people like Greg Savage are amazingly accessible. I've had 2 interactions with him. One, I had a candidate on my books once, and I sent it to a client. I just said, hey, a candidate outside your sector, not sure if you know anybody I should introduce her to. He CC'd in Greg Savage. Greg Savage said, oh yeah, we'll have a look. Send her over. Here's my business partner. And the intro was made. No fuss, all very easy. So that impressed me, and that he's not like, thinking he's on a different stratosphere to everybody else out there, which he is, but he doesn't portray himself as that. And then the next thing, I was thinking of setting up this podcast, and I itemized a few people that I'd ideally like to get on, and I just emailed him. I think it was week 2, and I said, "Hey, I'm doing a podcast. Love you to come on. Let me know if this would be something you're interested in." And he said, "Dualta, I'm really sorry. I'm on a world tour, and I'm really busy for the next couple of months. But hit me up towards the end of the summer, and we can make this happen." And that's it. We did, and yeah. So. Really, really happy with it. I'm really grateful for his time and his insight and his generosity to come on a podcast. Just because that's who he is and that's what he does. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, let me know if you did and if you got value from it. And hopefully we'll have another great guest on tomorrow. Won't be another Greg Savage. But yeah, hopefully we'll get some more people like Greg on in the future.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.